Hi everyone, and thanks again for joining. So last week we concluded our learning of the Mishnah of Brachot, and instead of continuing with the rest of the Mishnayot in that Seder of Mishnah of Zeraim, which have to do with the offerings and different tithes, I thought we'd move on to Shabbat, the Mishnah of Shabbat, and then eventually, God willing, we'll circle back and conclude with the rest of Zeraim. So, the first Mishnah of Shabbat, chapter 1, Mishnah 1. Yetziot HaShabbat. So we're dealing with the transferring on Shabbat of objects from domain to domain or within a public domain. The melacha, the forbidden labor of transferring of objects. Yetziot HaShabbat, Shtayim shehen arba bifnim, Ushtayim shehen arba bachutz. So the types of transfers on Shabbat are two which are actually four within, and two which are actually four without, outside. So it has to do with the private and the public domain. So what are these two and then four? So two is that for each there is two that are on a biblical level. There's hotzah, which is carrying out from the private domain to the public domain, and hachnasa, which is going the other direction. And doing just one portion of it would be the two additional, which is the two rabbinic violations, which is if you just put something down or just took something up in that act. Ketzad. So let's look at some examples. And it's interesting what the Mishnah will use as its chosen example. And we can talk about why that is. So Ketzad. How is this so? He'ani omed bachutz uval habayit bifnim. So what we're going to be using for all the cases that we're going to use in this Mishnah to describe the different laws is the case of a poor person is standing outside and a householder is standing inside. So why does the Mishnah use this? Maybe for no reason, or it was just a good example to use, but maybe it has to do with making sure that we know that although giving tzedakah, giving charity is a big mitzvah, it's very important, it doesn't take precedence over our obligation to not violate the Sabbath. So maybe it's using this as an example to make that point that even this good act, potentially, this very important mitzvah of giving tzedakah, doesn't take precedence when we're talking about violations of Shabbat. So let's look at the different cases. Pashat he'ani et yado lifnim v'natan letoch yado shel baal habayit o shenatal mitocha v'hotzi. So if the poor person extended his hand inside and placed an object into the householder's hand, or if he took an object from the hand of the householder, putting his hand inside his home, and then brought it out, then what's the result? He'ani chayav uval habayit pator. Then the poor person would be liable, and the householder would be exempt. And that's because the poor person in this case is doing both parts of the act. He's reaching in and taking, and then taking outside, or he's reaching in, going from outside the public domain to the private domain, putting it into the person's hands. The other person is passive, and therefore just the poor person in that case would be liable. Pashat baal habayit et yado lachutz minatan letoch yado shel ani, o shenatal mitocha v'hichnis. So now the case is if the householder extended his hand outside, so going from his private domain to the public domain, and placed an object into the poor person's hand, or if he took an object out of the poor person's hand and brought it inside to his house, so now he's being the active one, and the other person, the poor person in this case, is passive. Baal habayit chayav ve'ani pator. Then it would be the other way around. The householder would be liable. He violated Shabbat, and the poor person in this case would be exempt because they did not do anything actively to violate Shabbat. The other person was removing and placing and doing all the things on their own. Pashat, now we're going to talk about what if it's a mix. Pashat he'ani et yado lifnim v'natal baal habayit mitocha o shenatan letocha v'hotzi. So if the poor man extended his hand inside and the householder took the object from him, he's not passive now, they're both active. One goes from the public domain to the private domain, and the other one actively takes it after that transfer and is a part of transferring something from the public domain into the private domain. They're both involved. So if the poor man extended his hand inside the householder took it from him or placed an object into it, and he, the poor man, brought that object out. So he sticks his hand in, takes an object out. Both shnehen petorim. So both of them are exempt in the sense of, we use exempt means here from the scriptural obligations that would come with it, the sin offering, that kind of exempt, but they still did a rabbinic violation, but it's not a scriptural violation, because they're both involved in this act, and therefore both are only doing half of the violation. Pashat ba'al habayit et yado lachutz v'natal he'ani mitocha, o shenatan letocha v'hechnis. If the householder extended his hand outside and the poor man took an object from it, or placed an object into it and he, the householder, brought that object in, shnehen petorin, again, not a biblical violation by either of them, rabbinic for both of them, each doing half the act, not doing the complete act of transfer from one domain to another on their own, and therefore a lesser violation. So we'll stop there. That was the first Mishnah of Shabbat, and we'll continue with learning Shabbat. That one has a lot of information, so I thought we'll just do one today and just start off with that. And a lot of different laws are explained there about the different domains, the different transfers, what makes someone biblically versus rabbinically liable or not liable at all. So a lot more to learn about this topic. Continue with learning about Hotzad, learning about different malachot of Shabbat in the Mishnah on Shabbat. Okay, thank you so much for joining. Bye.